I remember being in surgery and feeling an overwhelming sense of love. I immediately thought, I must have died on the operating table. My analytical, scientific mind quickly kicked in. If I died, what is all of this? I don't believe in anything, and my parents always said I'd go to hell for being an atheist. I'm experiencing neither. This made me truly wonder what was happening and why I was there. I asked this question in my mind, and an answer came from the atmosphere around me. This is your home. You are a part of me, a part of us. Welcome home. When I heard welcome home, I lost it. It all came back to me, and I instantly knew that my life on earth was merely an illusion, a temporary state. I'm Nancy Ryan. I grew up on a small family farm in the cornfields of very northwest Chicago. I was a peculiar child, very spiritual. I saw a divine presence everywhere, telling my family, God is in the trees, Spirit is all around us. They found it odd because we were staunch Catholics, not just weekend attendees, but deeply devout. Around age 15, news reports about priests abusing children became prevalent, especially in the Chicago area. This led me to question my previous belief in God. Was I just imagining it all? By 16 or 17, I had largely decided God didn't exist, because if he did, how could such things happen? This solidified my move away from religion and spirituality. I went to college, earning several degrees in geology, becoming a rational, science-focused individual. By my mid-20s, I was a firm atheist. After college, I worked for the Department of Energy, doing scientific work in the Western United States. This evolved into scientific writing, as I was good at it, and many scientists weren't. I edited their journal articles and books, which sustained my career until my mid-40s. At 46, I had moved to Boulder, Colorado, and was feeling a bit dissatisfied with my life. My marriage had ended, and I was questioning what came next. I started looking for another job, thinking that's what I needed. A different job, perhaps in Denver. Later that month, between Christmas and New Year's, I took a week off. I went for a bike ride, dropping things off at the library, running errands, and then heading to a trail. Entering a traffic circle, the bike lane vanished, and the roadway narrowed. I cautiously eased in, noticing traffic from the highway slowing down to enter the circle. At the last minute, the lead SUV, instead of stopping, sped up. I was in a terrible spot, right where she was coming in. Instinctively, I put my hand out. I have no memory of what happened between putting my hand out and ending up on the hood of her vehicle. Somehow, I flipped off the bike and onto her hood, looking in at her as she was texting. I tried to pound on her windshield, but she kept driving, seemingly not seeing me right in front of her. I couldn't hang on. The hood was too slick. I slipped, desperately trying to grab something, but couldn't. I hit the pavement, hearing the crack of my helmet. Suddenly, she was over me. My backpack got caught on something underneath her vehicle, and at the same time, I reached up with my right hand and grabbed her axle. I don't know how long she dragged me, but it was at least 60 feet. Finally, a truck driver behind her saw what was happening, got around her, and drove his truck the wrong way around the traffic circle, stopping in front of her. I owe my life to that man. As soon as she stopped, I tried to wiggle out from underneath the vehicle. My shoulders cleared the front of her car when a woman approached, saying, "I'm a nurse, just stay where you are." I thought, what's the big deal? I'll just get up and walk away. But she insisted, "No, you've been in a serious accident. You need to stay on the ground." When the paramedics arrived, they began assessing me. As soon as one of them touched my neck, I screamed at the top of my lungs. It was incredibly painful. That's when I realized I was in bad shape. They took me to the trauma center. I had a head injury, a cracked collarbone, 5 ribs broken in multiple places, and a collapsed lung. The most significant damage, however, was to my neck and back. The doctor explained that every process in my back was cracked, and I had major damage to my neck and lower back vertebrae. They called in a surgeon who believed he could fix it by cleaning up the broken bits and installing titanium rods along my spine. The surgery was scheduled for 3 days later. Leading up to this, I had an unbelievable fear of death. It was the biggest fear of my life, paralyzing me in many ways. Going into surgery, I was terrified and almost convinced I wouldn't make it. They wheeled me in, moved me onto the operating table, and the anesthesiologist administered the anesthetic. Within about 3 seconds, I was drifting off. In previous surgeries, it had just been a gray nothingness, and then I'd wake up in recovery. This time, I drifted off and became even more awake than I was before the anesthesia. It was then that I realized something truly bizarre was happening. I woke up to a beautiful hillside, like a meadow with low grass and flowers all around. I was on the hillside, looking out over rolling mountain ranges. I thought, this is a cool hallucination. I can deal with this while in surgery. The first thing I noticed was a wave of peace, like the warmth radiating from a fireplace. It felt like I was being hugged, accompanied by a profound sense of acceptance and unconditional love. It was powerful, and that's when I knew something was wrong. Oh my God, I thought, I died. I remember being in surgery and feeling love, thinking I must have died on the operating table. My analytical, scientific mind immediately questioned, if I died, what is all of this? I didn't believe in anything, and my parents had told me I'd go to hell for being an atheist, yet I was experiencing neither of those things. This made me truly wonder what was happening and why I was there. I asked that question mentally, and an answer came from the atmosphere around me. This is your home. You are a part of me, a part of us. Welcome home. Hearing welcome home, I broke down. It all came back to me, and I instantly knew that the life I had on earth was just an illusion, a temporary state, and this was real. It was so obvious. Suddenly, I saw someone materialize from a fog, ethereal, vaguely human, with what appeared to be long hair, though I never saw her face. It wasn't about her. It was about me learning what I needed to learn. She said it was time for me to learn what I needed to in order to go back and make my life one worth living. Those were almost her exact words. I responded, "Whoa, I'm not going back there. Are you kidding me? I am not going back to that place." She replied, "Well, you've already agreed to go back." I felt like my younger, rebellious self challenging her. "I don't want to go back there, and I don't remember agreeing to go back." She said, "You did, before you were born into your life. Let me show you." It was a strange, movie-like moment where a screen materialized in the air before me, and she showed me planning my life before I was born. In a way, the experience was planned. I saw it. At one point, I looked behind me, and all there was fog, a gray, foggy expanse. In front of me, it was vibrant, perhaps a forest, a canyon, or a mountain I was walking in. I asked her about the fog, and she explained that my current location wasn't the ultimate reality, but rather a holding place, a place of learning. She said they created an environment comfortable for me to learn, with things and places I enjoyed, to allow me to learn what I needed to learn, to go back and make my life worthwhile. She taught me that not only was this spiritual place real, but everything was based on an energetic structure, not a physical one. Everything I saw around me was an illusion. The more I thought about it, the more I knew it to be true. The equivalent time I spent on the operating table, during which my blood pressure dropped and my heart stopped, the flat line lasted at most about 2 minutes. Yet, if I were to accomplish what I did there, traveling to places and learning things, it would take about 2 or 3 months here on Earth. It also seemed to last forever there. It was a completely different experience of time. What I realized from that is not that time passes differently, but that at the spiritual level, they are outside our perception of time. I went to one place where I stood, and all around me was the map of my life, like a virtual reality map, an old nautical chart laid out. I was at the center, surrounded by what looked like a compass rose. I saw different pathways stretching from one end of the map to the other, and I knew these were all the paths I had taken or could have taken up to that point. Then there were many pathways branching out from where I was, all leading back to the same place. The point of that particular teaching was that we can take one of many paths in life, and they pretty much lead us to the same destination. There isn't one right path. The other part was that the compass rose was figuratively centered in my heart area. The teaching she imparted was that you don't just use your human brain to make decisions. You also need to dig deeper into what we call intuition, that inner knowing. She said to balance those two so you make decisions from a holistic place, rather than simply an analytical one. Until that point in my life, I had completely ignored that. After that, I experienced what people call a life review. At the time, I didn't know these terms, NDE, life review. I had no idea about any of this. She led me up a meandering mountain valley to what looked like a pond. She told me to kneel by the pond and touch its surface. I did, then sat back on my heels, watching the ripples spread. On top of the ripples, I could see small pockets across the surface, which looked like little video vignettes of specific moments in my physical life. When I focused on one, I was back in it. It wasn't like watching from the outside. I was re-experiencing it from my perspective, but also from the perspective of others involved. I could feel everything they felt, as if it were my own. This deeply affected me. There were times when I helped someone or said something kind, and I could feel that person's spirit soar, how buoyant they felt because someone was kind to them. I also saw the downstream effects of those actions. If I said something positive and uplifting, I saw how that enabled them to be more positive with others. This teaching emphasized that we impact those around us, not just physically, but also energetically or spiritually, in every interaction, verbal or unspoken. Everything you do has an impact, so be more conscious of how you affect others. On the flip side, there were things that weren't so great that I did, which were also balanced out for me to learn from. There was a time as a teenager when my younger sister and I fought constantly. We just didn't see eye to eye, though I loved her. When I was about 17 and she was 14, I said something unkind to her. I didn't think anything of it then. It was just a way to get her off my back because I was tired of our fight. So I said something stupid and not very nice. She didn't react visibly at the moment. She just left. But in my review, I could feel the hurt I caused her in that moment. This was the second most impactful teaching for me. Feeling her pain at what I said was the biggest teaching moment ever. That's the one thing I wish I could give to people. A visceral understanding of how your actions and words affect someone else. In that moment, I realized I needed to change how I interact with people right then and there. That point woke me up like nothing else. It was a huge aha moment. Since I've returned, I remember that almost every day, and it helps me formulate how I interact with people. I'm very concerned and careful about how I interact with others. Suddenly, for the first time in my entire experience there, I looked up, and there were clouds in the sky. We looked for shapes in the clouds, like little kids. After a while, she stood up and said, "It's time for you to go now." I was not happy to hear that. I thought I had passed some test and would get to stay. I was planning an end run around my teacher, thinking, can I just run around her and keep running until I find where I'm supposed to go? I also thought if I threw enough of a fit, they'd just let me stay. I started getting a little weepy with her. At that point, she laid her hands on my broken shoulder, my ribs, and right here on my cracked sternum, and then she sent me back. I woke up screaming in the recovery room. I was yelling and furious to be back. The nurse helping me literally jumped back. I kept yelling, "Where is she? Where is she? I don't want to be here. Can I go back? Can I go back?" I'm sure they thought I was having a psychotic episode. The anesthesiologist came in and calmed me down, but I kept asking, "Can you please send her back to me?" They had no idea who I was talking about. I had a friend in the waiting room, so they brought her in, and I said, "That's not who I'm talking about. I don't want to see her. I want to see the woman I was with during surgery." They were completely bewildered. Finally, my rational mind kicked in, and I remembered everything that happened, but I thought, okay, you need to shut up because they don't get it. They don't understand what you went through. So I stopped talking. I was in a Lutheran hospital, and the next morning, one of the hospital chaplains poked her head in, asking, "Are you awake?" I knew who it was and blurted out, "Oh, thank God you're here." She came in, and we talked about what happened. She was amazing, truly amazing. If she hadn't reacted so positively, I might never have told anyone ever again. But she was very accepting, very positive, and explained that I had died. She said, "Well, you had a near-death experience." I asked, "What is that?" She explained, "It's a thing. People die, we bring them back, and then they have these experiences." That was the first time I ever heard of an NDE. She helped me understand it was normal, that I wasn't crazy, and that it was a real experience. Then she said, "Now you need to start thinking about what this means for you." I knew, and she was trying to help me understand, that this could potentially blow my life open in a way I never would have imagined before. It was a complete shift in what I thought was real, what was true, and everything I believed. I knew at that point that I had a choice. I could go back to the way things were, completely deny everything that had just happened, deny the experience itself and what I learned, and just try to return to my old life. That seemed somewhat safe because it was predictable. I knew that path. I was on it, even if I didn't like it. But this other path was a complete unknown. If I embraced what I learned and continued to learn from it, I had no idea where it would lead. I worried deeply about what it would mean for my career, as I was still in the sciences. I just assumed I'd never get a job again because people would see me as crazy. I was really afraid of that path. However, about 2 weeks later, when I came home from the hospital, I realized, I'm going to give this new path a go. I don't know where it will lead, but I'll see what happens. I was out of the body cast in just 2 days over 4 weeks when they had expected 16. It was very rapid healing. What I started doing was going out in nature every day and meditating. That really helped bring that soul level of awareness into my life. The second thing, which sounds simple but has a big impact, is truly learning how to be grateful. Every morning, before I even got out of bed, I would be grateful for basic things, like just being able to walk. I would almost meditate on it, really thinking and feeling the gratitude. I could have been a paraplegic from that accident, and I was so grateful I could walk. These simple acts of gratitude allowed me to focus on what was good in my life, and little by little, these small things helped me stay more centered and present throughout the day. It's about being aware of your actions in the moment without going on autopilot, which is where I was before. Now, I'm not hooked into dramas like I used to be. Whatever goes on in our governments, it's happening, but I'm still at peace in my life. Concerns? Yes, I have concerns about the world, definitely, but it doesn't change this core of peace inside me. I know it's important to be here in this reality. It has things to teach us. We all learn from it, but ultimately, we are not this reality. We are a bigger level of reality. I was learning how to live from that soul level of awareness rather than just my limited human level of awareness. Not that the human level was bad, but for me, it was very fear-filled and reacted to life rather than being proactive. I didn't want to be that way anymore. I wanted to live life from that higher level of awareness because it felt better. It was more peaceful, more connected, more love-filled, and joyful. It's a much better place to be. I'm not anywhere near as stressed out, and certainly not fearful anymore. It's been a truly great change for me. I'm no longer driven by this being a material world. I'm not stuck on that. I understand there's a bigger picture, not just to the world, but to each one of us. That fear of death I carried kept me from fully living, at least for me. It kept me thinking small and safe, and that's not necessarily where all of us are meant to be at all times. It's perfectly fine for some people, and at times in our lives, it's perfectly fine. But any decision based on fear is not, to me, the strongest decision you can make. It's somehow limited. When I work with people individually, I try to get them into a space where their decision-making is based on strength and self-trust, perhaps compassion or love, rather than, oh, I'm afraid that person won't like what I'm doing, so I'm going to do this instead of what I really want to do. For the vast majority of souls who come here to have a life experience, and it's funny because my teacher calls this a near-life experience, and I like to tell people that, they consider this near life, but not real life. All of us who are here for this near-life experience come for a variety of reasons. Some people come to learn a very specific thing. Many of us come to experience things we can't experience anywhere else, or that would be very difficult, like having a child, for example. You don't necessarily give birth while you're in heaven. So many people like to come here and experience having or raising a family. This physical reality is like a crucible, meaning it's a very focused place where you can learn many different things in a very short amount of time. So the real challenge is narrowing down what you want to learn while you're here. Among all those different reasons or purposes people can have, there's one core: to learn how to be in this environment and still live from a place of love and compassion, not just for your immediate family, but for everyone else. That's the core purpose we all share.